Welcome to the John and Jordy show. Today we had John Oehm. He is the owner and pilot of Sunshine Coast Ballooning. Today we talked about being a balloon pilot, where it originated from, a lot about regenerative farming and what could be done different. Give us a like and subscribe. Do you ever watch Kiltony? You ever seen that?
No.
It's like there's a guy on there, Uncle Laser. He's a comedian, like a redneck fucking. He's a cokehead, he is, but he's always got fucking chewing tobacco in his gums there.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the things most people don't realise is the most chewing tobacco is in Scandinavian countries.
Right.
Norway, Sweden, all that. That's where all the chewing tobacco really is.
Well, that's where it's used, you mean?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the most use, and it's not much smoking, but a lot of chewing tobacco, or snuff as it's called.
Don't they snort it as well?
Yeah, you can. That's when it's that real fine cut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You remember
Snuff. They used to use that in the mines.
Yeah.
Yeah, like old colliers in Wales. You learned about it in school. They have a little tin of snuff.
I did so much of it, my nose started bleeding.
I didn't even know that was actually tobacco.
Yeah, it's like really fine, eh?
Yeah, like dust almost.
Like a beige kind of colour, is it?
Oh, it depends on how it was done, but and when you sniff it, it absorbs through all the mucus linings in your nose.
Yeah, right.
Maybe that's what we need, boy, to open up our...
No, my nose. I need a fucking operation on my nose. It's fucked. It's gone. Sleep apps not even helping it. No. Yeah, thanks for coming in, John. Anyway.
Yeah. No worries.
Where do we start? It's balloon pilot.
Balloon pilot.
How long? How did you get into being a balloon pilot? Where was the first step? You're going, this is what I want to do.
It was never a step in what I wanted to do.
Right.
So I was a farrier. I shot horses for a living, blacksmith. And we had a pretty substantial business here in Queensland and a lot of staff, and we were showing for some of the best people in the country and all this sort of, like famous racehorses and all that sort of stuff. And basically we got to the point where I had 7 or 8 back surgeries in 2 years. And because you're bending over all the time, you're swinging hammers, you're basically hanging off the end of half a ton of horse. And I said to my wife, I need a job, though I don't need to shoe as many horses, never thinking about stopping. And all I was going to do was find a job to make a little bit of money on the side just to take that pressure off. Opened the local newspaper up and said, hot air balloon crew, can you start at 3 in the morning, drive a trailer and be reliable? I thought I can do that. Went around on the first day and they said, we'll get you up for a flight. And I said, I'm not interested. I had no interest. I was just there to make a couple $100 a morning and go and do my normal job. But then I got really interested in all the nerd side of it, the physics, I was about to say biomechanics, that's the horses, the physics and the weather and all that sort of stuff. And then I just wanted to get a little balloon and take my wife and kids for a flight a couple of times a year out west in the outback type thing. But what ended up happening was the Australian standards for training of balloon pilots and the regulations are the strictest anywhere in the world. So what happens is the pilots get poached to go to other countries. So I got a phone call to go to Canada for 6 months and fly a little balloon in Calgary. And I went, oh yeah, let's do it. And then it just snowballed, and then I ended up flying for other countries, or in other countries for other operators, and kind of a lot of things that were being done I didn't like. Maybe that could have been just the standards of the flying, the standards of the aircraft we're in, or how we treated the passengers, those sorts of things. So you kind of put your money where your mouth is and done our own thing. And that was a long process, but to go through all the regulations and requirements and also to get to a standard that the Australian regulator will allow us to do it. So there's only about 10 commercial balloon operators in the country.
What would be classed as like commercial? Like how many people would that be?
It's more about, so you can have a commercial license and fly for someone. It doesn't mean you can run a business. You have to be a registered airline. So it's a thing called an air operator certificate. So that's like another level kind of thing. So there's all these different levels. You've got a private pilot, but then you've got to do all this training to be able to even start doing your commercial exams, commercial flying, commercial hours. Then you've got to do a certain amount of hours before you can even be insurable, basically, because the insurance companies run aviation, as you can imagine. But a commercial operator can fly 2 people or it can fly 24 people, or anywhere in between. It just depends on balloon sizes and certain requirements. So, yeah.
So do the bigger balloons, do they have bigger carriages, or is it like...
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest baskets, they're literally a wicker basket, a woven basket, 6.5 metres long and carry 24 passengers.
Fuck, that's pretty big, eh?
Yeah. So,
must have a fair sized balloon with that one, yeah?
Yeah, so those balloons above are about 70 metres high. So, and we talk about balloon size in how many 100,000 cubic foot of air they hold. So that's what gives you the lift. So our biggest balloon is 260,000 cubic foot. That means nothing but a visual representation that's 1 million basketballs.
Right.
Yeah, and the big balloons, like the really big ones, which we don't fly, are well over double that.
Fucking hell.
Is every balloon different, like in terms of flying? Do they perform different stuff like that?
Yeah, basically the bigger so the smallest balloon in the world is what's called a cloud hopper. It literally doesn't have a basket. You strap a gas bottle to your back and a burner above your head and go for a flight. That's not a commercial thing, that's just a hobby thing. So that's the smallest, and then the biggest ones, like I was saying, are pretty big. The difference is the little balloons are like driving a Ferrari, and the big balloons are like driving a school bus. Everything's slower, there's more inertia, there's more sluggishness. So yeah, totally different. Yeah, and you just can't, where a little balloon you might be able to land it in a street here in the Sunshine Coast. The big balloons you just couldn't. There's just not enough size. And basically, the more experience you have, the bigger the balloon you can go. And they're less forgiving if things go wrong.
The bigger balloons?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So
with them being bigger, so if you wanted to go on a longer flight, would you be able to go on a bigger flight? Because I'd imagine it would take more gas to fill the balloon. Would the basket be able to hold that?
So that comes down to weight. If you lightly loaded a big balloon, it's way more efficient. So if you had a lightly loaded balloon, let's say like the big one we fly, with its minimum weight, you might have 10 hours of flight time. But at maximum weight, you have an hour and a half. So It all depends on the load that you're carrying.
Yeah.
So it's quite complex and quite different. Like people think it's just this, jump in a balloon and float off. There's so much to it. Understand how it works.
Yeah, when we went before, I remember you explaining about how you have different channels of air going in different directions, and you have to be on top of the weather. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah. So, we're kind of pretty up on what the weather's doing, and how we steer a balloon is winds at different altitudes go in different speeds and directions. It's called lamella winds. So you might go outside today and there's no wind at all, but at 500 metres, it might be travelling at 50k an hour. At 2,000 metres, it might be travelling at 100k an hour. So, and that's how we assess where we're gonna fly to. So yeah, it's and being able to create a flight plan based on something you can't see, and the forecasts that come from all the weather stations and that are just guesses of what's there. So there's quite an art to it.
What's the average speed they go, and how high can you go on them?
Average speed, most of our flights would be around 20 knots, so we cruise at about 40k an hour, roughly. That's sort of a general thing around here. But they can go pretty much any speed. If you get into what they call the jet stream, which is how there's been guys that have circumnavigated the globe in a balloon non-stop.
They've done that?
Yeah, a number of them.
When was that?
1996, I think it was a guy called Bertrand Piccard. He took off in Switzerland, flew down in the southern hemisphere, and then went completely around the earth, and then ended up landing in the desert in Mauritania.
How long did that take you?
That was, I think, 13 days.
It only took 13 days.
Apologies. That was 19 days to do that. But then only a few years ago, probably 5 or 6 years ago, a Russian Orthodox priest came out here to Australia, and he took off in northern Western Australia, and he went around and he landed 3 kilometres from Northam in 11 days.
So it didn't count?
Yeah, did count.
Oh, he
yeah,
did-
yeah.
did
No,
count.
he broke all the records for speed and distance and all the whole crazy stuff. So, but yeah, 11 days to go right around the Earth.
The entire Earth, 11 days.
Yeah.
Fuck, that's insane.
Yeah, and yeah.
I'm assuming he's come down a couple of times there. Yeah?
No, that's non-stop.
No touching ground at all.
No, not at all.
Fuck, how would you have so much fuel for that?
Well, that's part of the art of it, knowing that you can do it. I mean, you've got teams of meteorologists and you've got teams of operational specialists and everyone behind you as well. But yeah, I think that first one in 19 days, they took off with, I think it was 13,000 litres of LPG and landed with 3 litres. So that was pretty crazy.
That's insane, eh?
Yeah. So that was a big thing in the 90s. It was called the Last Adventures, and that was because everyone had done the highest planes, they'd done the most distance in a helicopter, all these different things. And Bertrand Piccard's, I think it was his great uncle, held the altitude record in a balloon and a plane, and also his other uncle held the depth in the Mariana Trench under the water. So he had a thing to do as part of his bloodline, and he was the first pilot to circumnavigate the globe in a balloon.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I didn't even know that, eh?
And up until then, more people had died attempting it than...
Yeah,
than
true.
that
I was going to
succeeded.
say, have you ever been tempted to do it? But
That's sort of not my thing.
yeah.
I'd much rather take people out, show them a good time when
Enjoyment,
they're in a
yeah.
normal flight, rather than the stress that goes with those sorts of flights. Yeah.
With the training for being a pilot, do you do similar training to flying standard planes?
Yeah, so all the air law and that type of stuff is the same. And then you've got all the training with how do you fly a balloon, as opposed to, a plane. So our commercial licenses, the only difference is a letter. So I have CPBL for balloon, and a helicopter pilot would be CPHL. So his requirements there. But one of the difficulties with the commercial balloon training is there's not many people that do it. You only do it when it's a good weather. And if you've got to accumulate a few hundred hours, in 1 hour goes when you can, it takes years quite often. Whereas if you're trying to get your commercial license in a plane, you can kind of
Do it
go out
whenever.
and just do 10 hours a day if you can afford it. Yeah. So there's quite a bit to it.
Do you enjoy it?
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's more about it comes with the stresses.
Yeah.
And it's so multifaceted. The easy part is the flying the balloon. It's all the preparation and there's the business side of ballooning on top of going for a fun flight. But it's great to go out and see people especially that look when you first take off, because it's a different experience when you take off. Quite often people don't know that we've launched. And just seeing people, having a great time, watching the sun come up over the Sunshine Coast, and that's sort of the good thing for me.
Yeah, when we did it was beautiful. I just seen like you said, the sunrise and that, and just I was shitting myself before doing it, thinking. I think I spoke to you a few times saying about because I don't like flying in planes and that, but it was so smooth, it's like, and you said it was what is it? One of the safest forms of flying, is it?
Yeah, it is, and by certain standards, it is. Yeah, I mean, you just don't see many accidents. Yeah, and that's mostly because of the training here.
Yeah.
And it is a fairly safe way of doing it, because we're only doing it in good conditions. We're not doing it in storms, and we're not trying to cross continents and that sort of business.
Have you had any like close run-ins when you're over in Canada with the different weathers and stuff?
Yeah. So I've had a fire in the air where I was just by myself in a little balloon, where there was one of the pressurised LPG hoses bust open and went through the flame, and had a big picture of a garden hose when you let it go and it flails around, except it's on fire. So there was that one, and a couple other little ones, but that all come from lack of maintenance standards. Now, Canada is quite a good country, but there's certain things that weren't done at the time. So, but the difference is here in Australia, we train for all of those things, not only during our private training, our commercial training, but also every 2 years we have to be assessed on all our emergency standards and all this sort of stuff. And because I'm the chief pilot, I'm responsible for my whole operation, so I can only be assessed by another chief pilot. So it's pretty high standards. So you learn to deal with emergency situations, hopefully that you'll never have to deal with. But yeah, that was probably the worst one, was like a garden hose on fire, and you just go back to your training. And we had a similar one happen not long after that. Well, sorry, it was another year, but similar area where there was a failure in one of the burners, and I had 12 people in the basket, and I had to there was no way of shutting it off properly because things were on fire, and we were on the ground by this stage. So trying to get people out and then go back into a burning basket with 300 litres of LPG, that wasn't much fun.
Not bad, eh?
So, but we got through it, and it was all that training. But they're stressful situations. But yeah, you put a lot of time and effort into training for it.
I suppose with Australia having so many safety regulations, it could probably be frustrating, but a good thing when it comes to that sort of stuff, yeah?
Absolutely. There's times when you get frustrated just with the processes, but it's what keeps us alive. And all this stems from, in 1989, Australia had the world's worst balloon accident.
The world's worst?
Yeah.
Right.
In Alice Springs. And then they found out that at that time, Australia was not regulated at all. There was no one checking anyone. But that we were flying nearly as many passengers in commercial ballooning in 89 as Ansett was flying people.
As where, sorry?
Ansett, we had like Qantas.
Right.
Was one of the big airlines here that no longer exists. But there was an unregulated ballooning in this industry flying 30 to 40,000 passengers a year.
That's crazy, eh?
Yeah. So they sort of panicked and they brought in all these requirements. But yeah, absolutely, it's frustrating, but it's what keeps us alive.
With ballooning, would that have been one of the first forms of flight?
It was the first.
The first.
It was the first. November 23rd, 1783.
That long ago.
Yeah.
1783.
Yeah. So,
Who's the wild man who figured that out?
Yeah.
well, I can tell you that if you want to hear that.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
So that was two paper makers were, or sons of a paper maker, were drying paper over a hot open fire. They saw that it was making the paper flap into the air. They thought, if we can make a bag and hold that, it might go up. So they made a little balloon out of paper. And their names were the Montgolfier brothers. Anyway, so then when they figured that out, they decided they were going to put a basket below it and send a chicken, a sheep and a duck for a flight because they didn't know if anything would survive in the air. So they thought, right, a duck goes in the air but stays on the ground, chicken stays on the ground, and a sheep has very similar body to a human. Yeah. So we'll see if it works. So they did it, and it went off and flew for about 45 minutes, and all the animals survived. So then about 6 months later, they were going to use condemned criminals for the first ever manned flight. And a young nobleman came up and said, you can't use condemned criminals because if this is the first manned flight, we're going to be famous. So him and his mate went up and they had a flight in France from the Palace of Versailles out into the country. And his name was Pilote de Rosière. So ever since then, anyone who flies anything is called a pilot. That's where it comes from.
What?
That's where the word
crazy
comes from. So yeah, that was 1783, November 21st. Yeah, so coming up soon, in what they call Montgolfier Day.
Where were they from? The inventors?
France.
Right.
Yeah, and then within 3 months, that same bloke was also the first man to die in a balloon because he decided he was going to try and cross the English Channel in a balloon. Remember, and they had no idea of how anything worked, winds and that. So he was the first to die in a balloon as well.
This might be a stupid question, but how did he die? Was it like
he probably just fell into the water, basically.
Yeah.
No one really knows.
Fucking hell.
Die of hypothermia pretty quick in the water.
I'm guessing in the 1700s they wouldn't be using gas in as well.
No, they had an open cauldron. And they thought it was the smoke that made it go up, not the hot air. So they put anything they could find into it that made smoke. So, sheep shit and wool and all, not necessarily the hottest burning stuff, but because they thought it was the smoke. But there were so many things they didn't understand. The first guys ever to cross the English Channel landed naked. Because what happened when they took off, they took oars for a boat, because they thought they'd be able to steer through the wind and all that sort of stuff. But And what happened is they couldn't keep altitude, so they knew they had to get rid of weight. So once everything's been thrown out, they got to the point where they had to get all the gear off. So they made it, and they landed on the English side of the channel, and but were buck naked. It's not that many years ago, but there's modern ballooners, as we talk about it, didn't start until about the 60s when we got nylon and LPG and all that, and that really revolutionised how and where and we can fly.
Do they ever use it for travels or more just leisure kind of flying? Like just
No, because you can't steer it.
Okay.
You can only go where the wind takes you.
right.
They did try and use blimps, so they're like a balloon, just not a hot air balloon. They use them in war times for lookouts, like they put them on the end of a rope and go up to 3,000 feet.
Well, there was a blimp, wasn't there? The one that blew up, was it?
The Hindenburg? Yeah, that was bad for blimp business.
Well, what's the go with that? Because I've seen photos and stuff. I've never really heard about it.
It was basically just a blimp is usually filled with a lifting gas, so either ammonia, hydrogen, or helium. And it was filled with hydrogen. And I think something happened where they snagged it or something, caught on fire, and it was gone.
First flight, or
No, it had been flying for years.
is that the Led Zeppelin? Has that got something to do with that?
I don't know. But they used to. There is a joke about Led Zeppelins about they go down like lead, so there might be some play on word there or something.
Because I know they use it as like their logo. It's like
But so there's a couple of them around the world still, but they're not. Once they're inflated, they have to be manned 24 hours, and they're not very financially viable for stuff.
I can't remember. It might have been David Blaine. Did he do something with helium balloons not long ago?
He did. He did a cluster balloon thing where he heap of helium balloons tied up to one arm, and he went up to some crazy altitude, and then he just cut himself away and parachuted down. That was something to do with, there was a television show or a cartoon show or something where they did it, and he wanted to copy that for
That's
his
it,
kids.
yeah. Just without it. That's one.
So like, if you kept going, like if you went to, like what's the maximum altitude you can hit? Is it like will you start stalling or will the balloon blow up?
No, if there's no atmosphere, a balloon won't act the same. So I think the world record's 80,000 feet in a balloon.
That's pretty high.
That's pretty high.
John thinks the Earth's flat, is it? When you're up there?
Not a hope in hell is it flat.
I've actually got my mate who's he's a passionate flat earther. We were going to have a chat with him about stuff soon, but yeah.
Well, I'm happy to take him out for a big flight one day.
To bunk it.
Yeah. But no, it's so you can go quite high and cover quite a lot of distances, and there's quite a lot of things you can do in a balloon.
So you'd never have the same flight twice.
No.
It's got different every time.
Yeah. I could never handle a factory job doing the same repetitious stuff. And even if I take off in the same place and land in the same place 5 days in a row, which would probably be rare, it would be a different flight anyway, different speed, different views, different sunrise, different clouds, different everything. Yeah.
Do you have instruments when you're up there? Like is there...
Yep. Yeah, so there's instruments that we have to have by law, which are altimeters and variometers and all these sort of things, as well as some navigational software that's on an iPad, as well as being able to read traditional maps if we need to as a backup. That's unlikely. Yeah, so it's certainly not a boring job.
If you don't know where you're going, I'm assuming you can't tell where you're going to land. Have you ever had any trouble with landing in someone's garden or farmland?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things with us. The better you get, the more often you land where you want to land.
Yeah.
But very occasionally you'll land somewhere and sort of say, "Is it all right if we land here?" And here on the Sunshine Coast, we haven't had any problems because it's also the way we handle things. I had a balloon stolen in Canada. We landed in a paddock, and the farmer had been mistreated by previous balloon pilots. So he said, "Look, you can't take the balloon, you've got to take your passengers away." I took the passengers back into Calgary and had to come back with the Mounties, and the balloon was gone. And there was a set of tractor marks up to the balloon and it disappeared. He ended up getting charged for hijacking a federally registered aircraft and all this sort of stuff, and got locked up. And
Oh, you actually got locked up for it too?
yeah, he ended up doing 3 months, I think. I was told anyway.
Even though it's his property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, by law, we can kind of land wherever we want because it becomes a safety thing.
Yeah.
So, but we don't have those problems because that was one of the main reasons I wanted to start my own business. I'd seen how other companies had treated landowners, and I chose not to run our business that way, and so far we haven't had any problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, the biggest problem we had is a person rang us up and said they run a bed and breakfast or a resort thing for A-list celebrities, and we'd flown over that morning and an A-lister, whoever that may have been, was in the bathtub in the back buck naked and was worried we'd taken photos. So they asked us to stay a bit higher in future, And that's the only real problem we've had.
Do you know who it was?
No, because I went back looking. I've gone back looking.
Yeah, we got the photos.
Yeah, because every flight has GoPros and cameras running for the passengers.
Yeah.
So I'm straight back looking at the GoPro footage, but I couldn't see anyone.
Yeah, it was me.
How long's the average flight you guys do? Is it different packages and stuff?
No. So that was another thing that we do. We don't, not trying to do the hard sell on any of this sort of stuff, but we just do a flight. So you don't pay for a 30-minute flight, a 45-minute flight, an hour flight. It's always an hour minimum.
Mm.
And if we fly for 2 hours, so be it, we fly for an hour. It's sort of just, there's no add-ons where everything is thrown in and you're given everything as part of the package. So that's, what we do.
Do most people that go on, is it like their first time, or does there repeat customers, like people that just come back because they just love it?
So you get a lot of first-timers.
Yeah.
One of the things that's shocked us here, so we've been operating for 4 years now, is the amount of repeat customers we get, which is fantastic. The fact that they make an effort to come again, or their family might be visiting from New Zealand or somewhere else in the country, and they book in and come out with us. So that's a pretty good thing, and they jump in the basket, because I don't see the people until they turn up and the balloon's ready and they hop in. And they, how you going, John? And I'm like, I don't remember them because I've seen so many people most of the time. But it's good that they feel there's a personal thing there. So that's what we want our business to be. So, and that's part of the ballooning is to have it all good.
Yeah, that's cool.
Without kissing your ass as well, you do a good job of you make it very entertaining as well, and like you're cracking jokes and stuff.
My dad jokes are on point.
Yeah, they're good.
A lot of practice.
My daughter just rolls her eyes and really.
She's heard the same one 1,000 times.
No, it's a new one every day. Every day. But but you got to love what you do, and it makes the job easy.
What's the business called as well?
Sunshine Coast Ballooning.
Sunshine Coast Ballooning. And where? It's same Instagram, yeah. Sunshine Coast Ballooning.
Yeah, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all them.
You've got it all going.
You'll find us.
Yeah, that's good.
So it's So when we're the only ones here.
To jump back to change the subject a little bit, kind of related with the farm stuff. Your background originally was farming, yeah.
Yeah. So I grew up in a working class kind of family in a little town called Wombat, and farming, mostly big acreage farming.
That's New South Wales.
Southern New South Wales. Yeah, a couple of hours inland from Canberra, and farming or cropping 10, 12,000 acres of canola, wheat, things like that, as well as cattle, sheep. Yeah, so grew up in that, and but also had a mother who was a racehorse trainer, so we had that and things like that as well. So yeah.
Oh, your mum was a racehorse trainer.
Yeah, to this day. Yeah.
Was she training the horses or the people riding the horses?
No, the racehorses.
Right.
Yeah, and my sister is a jockey. So you wouldn't think so looking at me.
Yeah, you'd be too little to be a jockey, right?
Oh yeah. so my brother's as big as I am, and the joke is that we ate all her food growing up because she's like 50 kilo, tiny. But yeah, so you grew up in farm and sort of the big broadacre agriculture.
What is the difference between agriculture, monoculture, and say permaculture then?
All right. So agriculture comes simply from the word agrarian. So agrarian means of the soil. That's all it means. So agriculture could be anything that is in the process of producing something of the soil. Monocultures are literally just that, a single type of culture. So when you start looking to say where I grew up, it'd be nothing to see 10,000 acres of canola. So 10,000 acres is a fair amount of ground, and you just see yellow flower. Yeah, so you've got one kind of crop, and then say like with permaculture that we practice, it's trying to have things produced in the way that the earth would normally do it anyway, rather than fighting against the earth. So if I want to grow 1,000 acres of canola, I need to go in and kill everything. Then I need to go and plough it. Then I need to go and sow it, so seed the ground with the canola. But then as it grows, because I have a single crop, I have a single pest, then I need to go in and use certain pesticides, herbicides, there's other ones, fungicides, to be able to maintain that crop. Then I harvest it, and then I go in and I burn it off, and then I go in and kill everything again, anything that might be wanting to grow through in the bottom, and I start again. So, and what happens over a number of years, you've just taken all the life out of the soil, and you've salted the soil, and you've done all these really negative things. So then they have to go in and grow other things to try and recover the ground. Whereas with, say, permaculture, the idea behind the permaculture is that everything lives in a symbiotic relationship to support each other. So one of the ones that people kind of like because they can visualise it, one of the oldest forms of it is some of the native Indians in America used to do a thing called the Three Sisters. So they would grow corn, and then the corn would be the trellis for the bean to grow up. The bean would be putting nitrogen back in the ground because it catches nitrogen out of the air, and sweet potatoes growing around the bottom would loosen the soil, which helps the other two grow, but would also give ground cover and mulch. So you've got three things working to look after each other. You picture if we do that on a basis of 10,000 things, there's no work.
So why do they go towards? Why do they come away from that then?
So that can be a really difficult one to get into, because the first thing that you look at is people will sit there and say you can't feed the world doing it the way we used to do it. But the other side of it is it's just money. If you start looking at the history of actually, we'll go back to it. Henry Kissinger said once that if you control the food and you control the people. So if you start looking at everything like canola, so canola doesn't exist in nature. It used to be called rapeseed. It's been so genetically modified, it's a completely different plant now, and they've created herbicides and fungicides that will kill everything except that. And then that gets broken down and used for lots of different products, and it's just about money and control.
And you're saying they use different herbicides and or pesticides. Would the plant be absorbing all that shit as well then?
Oh, absolutely. It's proven it does. And then there's also it absorbs it, so it ends up in our food. So if you go back to the 80s, there was a thing called DDT. I don't know what the chemical compound for it was, but it used to get sprayed on all these plants. It's now endemic to all potatoes that you buy. You buy any potato anywhere in the world that's a white potato, and get it tested, it has DDT in it. And DDT has been illegal for 20 years in Australia.
Oh, shit.
So
because it takes that long to break down.
It just stays in the cells.
Yeah.
I don't know much more than that part of it, like how it stays in those cells, but that's what it does.
The Roundup's the same, eh? They said like if they stop using it now, I think in 80 years' time, it'll still be present.
Yeah, so Roundup is glyphosate. Glyphosate is Agent Orange. Have you heard about the Agent Orange in Vietnam? Mm-hmm. Basically the same thing, a defoliating agent. A plant can't grow if it doesn't have leaves. So look at all the problems that happen with Agent Orange, and then if you do some research, the people that are having the same illnesses due to Roundup exposure or glyphosate exposure.
Gut issues and stuff like that.
Yeah, huge problems.
Yeah, and I think cities that have more of it tend to have more health problems.
Yeah. And it's so well protected by the big organisations, and you've got different farmers in the world that have been sued successfully by Monsanto, organic farmers, because a seed happened to go from their land onto Monsanto's land, and they've sued them because it's a different seed. You know, so it's, I mean, that's a whole rabbit hole that can, you know, you can go down, and you've got to be really careful to understand a little bit of the stuff before you swallow all the information you get. But but it's really scary what is there. I mean, you know, why do we go to the supermarket and there's a health food aisle? What does that make everything else?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we're so conditioned that health food has to be organic. You know, it wasn't that long ago that all food was organic.
Yeah.
You know, all food. No, you know, you never heard about hormones being put into food, or, you know, we didn't have to worry about pasteurised and homogenised milks, you know, things like that.
When did they start doing that?
Milk,
Yeah, like pasteurising milk.
1972.
So yeah, it's not that long ago.
So, and that only come. Do you want to know why that happened? Because that's a really cool one. We used to have a decentralised dairy industry where every town would have dairies close to them. When we started getting the large stainless steel milk trucks, you've seen them getting around?
Yeah.
So they were starting to be made. Now we can transport dairies milk larger distances. You take raw milk that's full of enzymes and all the good stuff, put it in a large steel container in a hot country like Australia, milk starts going off pretty quick. So they started pasteurising it, and pasteurising is cooking it really fast and takes away all the live stuff in it. But then what was happening is people say here on the Sunshine Coast, we're going, my milk tastes different this week as what it did last week, because we're travelling at large distances and milk tastes different depending on what the animal eats. So we might have been trucking a truckload of milk from Coffs Harbour 6 hours away, different tasting milk this week. So then they started homogenising. You know, homogenising is basically pushing it at high pressure through a series of sieves and breaks down any of the milk fats that are still in there. So milk all tastes the same no matter where it comes from.
It's when you don't get the cream on top, eh? Is that right?
That's part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they break all that down and get rid of it. And you're basically drinking white water.
Yeah.
You know, it has nothing like... And that's why one of the biggest arguments for people, or governments especially, that sit there and say, you know, you can't have raw milk, is that people get sick. That's because our guts are so not used to it. Yeah, that's why people, if they go to France and eat some of the milk and cheese there because it's all raw, they might get a bit crook, a bit of diarrhea, things like that. It's no different if you go to Bali and drink the water. If you're not used to it, you know, your body...
It's got to adapt.
It's got to adapt. And a basic thing like milk, you know, they've taken away from us. So then that's why people start doing things like bath milk and all that sort of stuff, and goat's milk, and yeah.
You were the first one to put me on to the bath milk. I've been drinking it for the last fucking 4 or 5 years now.
Yeah.
I don't like the taste of standard milk now, you know. So the argument I've had with one of my mates back home, I was trying to tell him to switch over and get raw milk, which is pretty difficult to find in the UK, right? I don't know what it's like in the rest of Australia, but on the sunny coast it's pretty easy to get.
Yep.
But my mate, a friend of my mate was telling him not to drink it because she works on a dairy farm, and said that you got a high risk of getting TB. That's why they don't do it in the UK. Is that nonsense?
Tuberculosis.
Yeah. But like TB, they got to test that for the farms anyway, Nick.
That's a stretch. That's a big stretch.
Yeah.
So when the milk comes out of the cow's udder, it's sterile, right? It is what it is, right? And basically from the process from there to when it gets bottled, it never gets out in the air. It doesn't touch anything dirty. It's in a totally sterile situation with all the stainless steel pipes and all that sort of stuff. And it's as healthy as you're going to get. Some dairy farms you do go to and you walk around and go, I can't believe I'm drinking milk out of this place.
Because it's so dirty.
Because they're a bit rough, you know.
Yeah,
I mean, if you've got 300 or 400 cows shitting 20 kilo of shit every half an hour while they're on the concrete, it's going to look a bit messy.
Yeah.
You know, so you've got that side of it. But no, I'd really be shocked about that one.
Well, I was watching, I don't know if you've seen it, Clarkson's farm.
Yep.
Yeah, so he was going over the avoiding TB with the badgers and whatnot, you know, and he was saying if they get one badger within a certain distance that potentially has TB, they have to shut the whole farm down.
Yep. Yep.
So I think the argument of the cows getting TB, then having raw milk, is a bit stupid, don't you think?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's. I think we've been so conditioned to be scared of everything, as well. And as far as I know, there hasn't been TB in cattle in Australia in 40 or 50 years.
Right.
As far as I know, that could be wrong, but if you treat things as they're supposed to be treated, i.e., if you've got a litre of milk that's just come out of the cow and you left it on the counter for a week, it's not going to be very good for you to eat or drink, sorry. But, realistically, the same can happen. You leave a piece of meat out.
Yeah.
You leave a cucumber on the bench and eat it when it's half rotten, you're probably going to get sick. So it's about treating things correctly. And, when you look at the process that the dairies have to go through to put milk on the table, it's about money.
Because they can store it for longer, right?
Yeah.
So they're going to make more money because it's less wastage.
Yeah. And then you've only got to start looking at things like supermarkets. There's a reason why the supermarkets will have milk at the opposite end of their area to other cold stuff. So you have to go around the entire store to be able to get to the milk, the bread, things like that. So it's actually called trolleyology. It's a study of how you can maximise the time that a person spends within a supermarket.
Yeah.
And it has the same science behind it as casinos, keeping people in casinos.
Well, I walked into Coles the other day. Literally, the first thing you see is like a what's it called? Like the donut. Oh, I can't remember what it's called. Like, what's that big donut chain? Krispy Kreme.
Krispy Kreme.
Like the first thing is just like boxes of them. Like you walk in and there's a stand right there, and I'm like, that's the first food that's like in your face.
Yep.
Like, buy me.
Yeah.
Not that I really like that shit, but like if you're a kid, if you walk in with your family, your kid's gonna want that.
Yeah, absolutely.
They know that.
And, up until recently, they were having the $1 a litre milk wars, So I know a lot about this milk stuff because we have some friends quite heavily involved in it when the industry was deregulated. And we lost, I think it's 80% of all dairy farms in Australia because of government problems. And there's only these two suppliers, and they were selling milk cheaper than the dairy farmer can produce it. So, I mean, that's a race to the bottom, isn't it? So... but they get us by marketing in the right way. Everyone needs milk. My eldest son's just left home and gone off to work, and he used to drink on average 3 litres a day. Now, for an average family, if you're buying the better stuff, you're paying $4 or $5 for a 2 litre. It adds up.
Yeah.
So that's how they get you.
Watching Clarkson's farm, it was like an eye opener to me how little money farmers actually make. And maybe not all farmers, but that's kind of the thing the show when they're trying to highlight that sort of stuff is insane. The amount of regulations and everything they put on the farmers and the supermarkets and everything, it just puts so much pressure on them.
Yeah, there's farmers out there now that have contracts with the big supermarkets because at the end of the day we've got 2 big supermarkets. And if you don't supply them at the prices they want, they'll just shut you out. Or when your produce turns up, they'll just say it doesn't suit, and you don't get paid for it. That's why the whole idea of direct marketing, dealing with people from farm to person, minimising food miles. A good percentage of the stone fruit that you eat in Australia is a year old by the time you're getting it on the shelves. Eggs can be 2 months old before they get put on the shelf in the supermarket. That's a living, breathing entity that's deteriorating the whole time. And the other problem is our taste as people have changed. We have people that will come to our place and eat our lettuce and go, oh, it's bitter. But that's because it's real lettuce, not
water.
Not used as a filler.
Yeah.
There you go. You look at another thing. Coles just got busted for putting bamboo fibre in their mince mix to bulk it out. That was only 2 weeks ago.
Mince as in the
mince for burgers. Yeah.
Fucking hell.
Just so it weighs more.
So that it fills it more.
Yeah, right.
Looks bigger.
Yeah.
So and then you got to start talking about nutrient density. How long food or the nutrient density. We've got this thing where everything has to be bigger. Everything's bigger, you know. If you're eating a peach off the tree that's the size of a cricket ball, that's had all the right environment around it, it's going to taste totally different to that thing that was picked green before it had ripened with enough sugars and all that sort of stuff, put into cold storage gas for a year, then trucked half the country or a few thousand miles away to be put in another cold room to then be put on the shelves so that you can look at it. So, I mean, none of this is conspiracy or anything. It is what it is.
It is what it is, yeah.
And it's about people making money and not about our health.
Yeah.
So it's pretty scary stuff. And the further you get into it, the more you just want to stay at home and grow your own food.
Yeah. I know the ballooning's your business now, but has that always been your like the way you've done your food? You've always done it for yourself?
No, we've been through. So, like a lot of people, you stumble upon things or you learn new things. My mother always had a veggie garden growing up and all those sort of things, but we just didn't know any better. You know, it was just, we ate good food and all that growing up, but wouldn't have gave any thought to having margarine on something. I wouldn't touch margarine if I was going to grease bearings with it, you know.
The flies don't even land on that shit.
Yeah, you know, and I mean, it's just the most disgusting thing ever. But we had margarine because that was the cool thing to have. Whereas now, you know, of course, it's animal fats and butter, and I'd trust the cow before I trust the scientist, you know, that type of thing. But no, and we've just got more and more into it as the years went along, and started to realise things. And some of them are small realisations, and you go, oh, you know, I'll think about that for a couple of days or a few weeks, and then you change your mind on something. And then other ones, they just hit you like a 10-ton truck, and you go, wow, I can't believe I didn't know that, or that that's the case.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Like, even when you mention to people about like drinking tap water and things like that, people like look you mad, you know.
Yeah.
But with the and like things like seed oils, you know, like you're saying, like canola, like that, like the way they extract it. I've watched like little YouTube videos on how they make the oil from where they got to bleach it, they got to they got to heat it to a certain temperature to get the smell out of it, put chemicals in.
It's scary.
It's insane, eh?
Yeah. Or you could have, a bit of tallow.
Yeah, a bit of tallow,
You only got to go back 50, 60 years, and the grandmothers would have had a little tub of beef fat that when they cooked the roast, they separated it off, and that was probably what went in to cook the next thing. And they might have some bacon fat and some lamb fat, depending on what they were doing. Now, I know that there's problems if you're having too much of that, but we're not talking about sitting there eating, tallow. We're talking about...
There's a lot less disease back then too.
Yeah.
Whether that's the food or probably a combination of things.
And tank water, rainwater, all that sort of stuff. Interestingly, Gympie Council, just north of Sunshine Coast here, is the first council in Australia that is in the process of taking fluoride out of the water, out of the town water. And they're coming up with a fair bit of resistance, but it's basically because they've proven that no amount of fluoride is not poisonous. Yeah, it's a simple fact that there is no acceptable level.
So go on, sorry.
They gave it to the Jews, before
What's the argument for having fluoride in the water?
It's supposed to make your teeth better and your something else. I think the other one, but...
Makes you dumber.
Yeah, definitely makes you dumber. One of the funny stories was my first ever trip to the dentist. I was 14-year-old. I'd never been to a dentist before. Mum took me and my brother and sister to the dentist, and I've got good, strong teeth, no fillings, nothing. And the first thing the dentist said when he looked in my mouth was, "Oh, lucky we've got all this fluoride in the water. It's giving these kids beautiful teeth." I'd never drank town water to that point. So my old mum gave him a bit of a sool up about that because we'd been on tank water our whole life.
Fucking hell.
But, yeah.
But that's a mad argument to think the government care about people's teeth enough to put fluoride in water to keep their teeth good, you know? It's just...
I think there's more around that. I mean, you look at the studies of what it actually does to people, with pituitary glands and all this sort of stuff. It's pretty crazy. But yeah, to think that a government cares, I think that's like, thinking the stripper likes you.
Yeah. That's so true. They do.
Well, maybe you give them more money than I do. But no, it's a really weird thought. And you do control things. So look at... Or the government controls things through things like food and the illusion of choice. Now, you've only got to go and look at what happened during COVID. And, people couldn't get certain foods. I mean, I think, Jordy, you were talking the other day about lettuce being $17 a head or something.
Yeah.
Obviously that didn't affect us because we've got our own stuff. But the people that were screaming about not being able to get foodstuffs that they normally get just because the trucks couldn't run, it's pretty amazing. So you imagine if we had a proper shutdown in the world.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
You know.
I think you said to me before as well that the biggest waste of space in the world is lawns.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so lawns are nothing but a picture for vanity. So they started, the first documented ever lawn was at the Taj Mahal in India, and it was maintained by 6 widows with scissors. And it was to show how, look how wealthy I am. I can put time and effort into growing something that I don't eat or use for anything else. And then it went on to be used also, knights in England used it because, again, around their castles or manor houses and all that. Yeah, I mean, it utilises some phenomenal figure of the world's chemicals and the world's water supply. So, do you really think if you would be growing lawns and having to water it if you had to carry the water?
No.
So it's a first world problem, isn't it? So that's not saying you shouldn't have a football field or you shouldn't have a bit of grass that your kids can play on. That's fine, but I'm just trying to think of the actual statistic. There is a theory, and there's been studies done, but I don't know. I haven't looked right into them. But they say that if you took all the lawn areas in each city and grew food, you'd be able to feed the city.
I believe that.
Yeah,
you think they don't let you do that because I think there was a tree in Budrum was saying like people were growing fruit trees out the front and they cut them down.
It was that was a few years ago. There, all the streets in Budrum were covered in fruit trees. Yeah, and they took them down because in case someone slipped on a piece of rotten fruit.
Fuck off!
Hate it when that happens.
And the council comes in, cuts them all down without saying it because they knew they'd have a scream on the hand, but. It's crazy, bureaucracy, and any time that the government gets between what you grow out of your own labour and what you put in your mouth, there's a problem. If you eat something that you shouldn't eat and you get sick, you should take some accountability there.
For sure.
And that, but there's no accountability for the shit that we get forced into us now, and then they go, we need more hospitals and we need more. So there's arguments left, right and centre for all of it. But
even with things like tobacco in it, like the government will sell you tobacco, tax it to fucking high hell, but you'll go to prison if you grow a tobacco plant. I think it's worse for prison time rather than growing like cannabis.
Yeah.
In Australia.
Crazy. That's only tax.
Yeah.
So they're missing out on tax. You can't tell me it's because of the health.
No,
it's probably healthier because it's not grown fucking...
So, chewing tobacco. The only reason that chewing tobacco is not legal to be sold in Australia is when the legislation for tobacco was written, they left it out, so there was no avenue to tax it. So that's why chewing tobacco is not illegal in Australia to be sold. You can have it, but you can't sell it.
Making a comeback, I've never really tried them, but those like Zyn pouches, like all the kids are doing them now.
Yeah, I didn't know about that, but it's I mean, I smoked heavily for years. I've given it up now, but the idea of taxing it to the price, whatever the crazy price for tobacco is now, all it does is drive it underground. And you only got to look at the news and see all these major busts and operations catching people selling illegal tobacco. And it's
what do they call it, like chop or something?
Chop, yeah. And they're bringing in shipping containers full of stuff from Thailand and that, and getting caught. But it's the only thing they're basically getting them for is tax evasion.
And the whole argument for it being like, the argument for even with like the raw milk or tobacco or whatever, we're taxed, but they try and say, but it's bad for your health, they should be but like, they're selling you cigarettes, they're selling you alcohol, they fucking medications that they sell you are just terrible for people. It's just
so there's a saying, if something's punishable by fine, it means it's legal for a fee. Yeah,
it only applies to people who don't have a shit ton of money.
Yeah, that's right. So you're able to smoke. We don't care if you smoke as long as you pay all the extra tariffs and taxes. And I mean it's ridiculous. There should be, a little bit of accountability. I don't believe in total anarchy, but basically let people do what they want to do as long as it doesn't affect someone else.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, but we're just getting so used to being told, you know, do X, do this, do that, pay that, and you know, we're becoming nice little sheep. But if you're going to act like sheep, you deserve to be slaughtered like them.
I want to pull back as well to, you know, like the permaculture stuff, we're growing everything in synchronicity. Yep. Is that possible to do on like the masses to be able to feed everybody?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But it does take a little bit of having respect for a farmer. So farmers aren't dumb, but what's happened is they've been pushed to a place where they just do certain things because it's how they make money. You know, basically bring it back to small farms, less travel. You going and buying off the farmer. You know, government hates that, don't they? Where do they make the money then? Mm-hmm. You know, especially if it's under the table, a bit of cash or something. You know, the government misses out. But small acreage production is 10 times as productive as large monoculture. It might even be as much as 100 times more. It's unbelievable. So we do a thing in permaculture which is talking about yield. So everything that you do, you want to be able to get a yield out at the other end. Yield could be food, but yield could also be the ability to not have to work and you can sit at home with your wife and have a beer. You know, there's something as a positive end product. So we try and do things that really blows people's mind. If you start talking about square acres or square meterage, we talk to people about how many metres of yield can I get off 1 square metre? And people go, well, you can only get 1 square metre of yield because they think on 1 square metre I'm going to grow corn. But what if we grow sweet potato under the ground, herbs along the top of the ground, something like chilies, capsicums 6 inches above the ground, corn a bit higher above the ground again, and say pigeon pea above it again. Now we've got 7 metres of yield off 1 square metre. Try and put that into 1,000 acres of agriculture.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So, but when the problem with that is, if you try and do it on 1,000 square metres of agriculture, you need labour, because with the monoculture stuff, like say canola, you have one machine that seeds it, one machine that harvests it. Whereas if you're growing 7 different things, you need different ways of harvesting. And if you're doing it on large acreage, that would be big machines. Whereas if we come back to, how about we just feed our family of 5, and then if there's anything excess, we give it to our friends. Or the neighbour who has, you know, what we do at the moment, we talk to our 2 or 3 of our neighbours and they go, oh, we're growing pumpkins this year. We go, oh, well, we won't grow pumpkins because they'll want our sweet potatoes. So we'll swap them for pumpkins.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then you start sharing that around. You know, I'm not going to grow cattle if my neighbour's growing the cattle. I'm going to grow sheep, and then we'll swap. And then we can also use our neighbours' animals to benefit our land. So way more productive on smaller acreage.
And could you do it where there's more labour? Could you do it as a cost effective if everybody worked as a team?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, that whole idea of, I know I keep going to canola, but that's just an easy one that people know.
Of course.
You know, they go, it's certain, depending on your area and that, I'll sow it at this time of year, I'll spray it at that time of year, I'll spray it again at that time of year, I'll harvest it at that time of year. Whereas doing the way that we're talking about, this symbiotic relationship where things are growing all year round, you only take it when you need it. Mm-hmm. And if it, say something like tomatoes, well, they'll drop off the vine and reseed for next year and they're there. So it's actually less labour intensive. If you do it with design in mind, with some intelligence rather than just mind numb and go out and plant rows of one thing. Mm-hmm. So a lot more productive.
Do you think it is possible to get the entire planet or countries or...
No.
You don't think it's possible?
No, I don't. I think that would be a utopian view that's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's too late now, eh?
Yeah.
Too far.
Too far gone.
Yeah.
People do not. People don't understand things. We had a couple at our place the other day. Very intelligent woman, very worldly, had a look at some of our chickens and didn't know that chickens come in different colours. That's a simple thing that you think you'd learn at school. Mm. But she was a 45-year-old person, had never seen a live chicken.
Just the battery hens or something like that?
Well, she might have seen photos. She'd never been around a live chicken at all.
Yeah, that's
so
crazy.
We've got so far detached from where our food comes from. People, why did our great-grandparents survive through the Depression? Because they knew how to grow things and work with other people. Mm. So the idea of community. And community doesn't have to be the church or the cult or anything like that. It just, it might be your neighbour you see 3 times a year and go, oh, I'm going to do this. Oh, yeah, we'll do that. And then we get along. So I think there'll be too much resistance, and I think people are lazy. They don't want to put the time or effort or thought into growing their own thing in general. And, there's a reason why there's supermarkets. Convenience. We've got so busy, we're travelling, we're doing all these sort of things. It used to be that you had, the dairy farmer would, well, not the dairy farm, but the purveyor would deliver the milk. You'd have a butcher on the corner, you'd have a baker, have all these things. Now it's all in one store, right? And it's all been made faster, softer, like bread. Most people, they even when they have sourdough, it's not real sourdough. It's just had a bit of vinegar put in the mix and it tastes a bit different. Yeah. So and people don't like, good steak. How often do you hear someone say, "Oh, the steak's so tender," right? Well, there's parts of the animal that aren't so tender, but probably taste better. Yeah. Yeah. So we've just got lazy. Yeah. Why is it you go to the supermarket and you can buy a cut up carrots, pre-cut up carrots? Yeah. Pre-cut up cauliflower. Mm. That's, I don't care who you are, that doesn't take long to do.
No, it doesn't. No. Seconds.
Yes. The thing that pisses me off is when you see people feeding this stuff to their kids. Because when you're an adult, I feel like you can make your own decisions. You know what I mean? You can eat McDonald's for every meal if you want, but you got to live with that. Yep. And if you have half a brain, it's not good. But then they give them to these kids that are not fully developed. You know what I mean? They give them the shit, and that's all they know, and they grow up on that. It's like, what hope do they have? You know what I mean? Well, some people break free, like Jake. He was kind of talking about that, like
Stone.
Yeah. And like he's pretty health conscious stuff, but that's when I feel bad for him, because that's like manslaughter, I reckon.
Well, it is, and it's setting them up for failure. And then you start looking about why they have all these different illnesses and psoriasis and all these things. Well, I'm the same. I get this, but anyway. But it's that is a thing, and this is just my opinion. But you have a look at kids that have grown up on proper food. They're bigger, they're stronger. They're generally, I'm going to say, smarter. There must be something to do with brain development and all that sort of stuff. But there's also this side that if they're engaged in doing this sort of stuff as well. There's a dairy farmer that we know in the Mary Valley near here. I'd love to take you and show him the 3 sons. They grew up on the dairy farm. And the first day I met him, the son comes out, and he is 12-year-old, and he's 127 kilo. Right, and I got talking.
He's on the raw milk.
He's on the raw milk. Right? Everything that's made is raw milk, because they're allowed to. It's their king. But he's not fat. They're just big lads, and the lads. He come walking out carrying half a motorbike engine in one hand. And that's what he was doing at the time. They're smart kids, but it's at the same time they're eating good food as well, and I'm not saying that you have to be big to be healthy. I'm just saying that it's noticeable. You don't have these little weakling kids. Mm-hmm. And I suppose a correlation of that was post-war Australia. All the kids that were growing up through the food rationing in World War II and that were quite small. And you had problems like rickets and bone development issues and that because Australia was on rations until 1970-something. Most people don't realise it was that long. But the people that grew up big, that weren't having the rations, were the country people that were, through necessity, growing their own food.
Eating real food.
So, I think if you're feeding, you're feeding kids the shit, it's a poor thing. Parents should be held accountable. And that doesn't mean my kids have probably had McDonald's and that a couple of times in their time. Interestingly, my daughter, who you met the other day, about a month ago, begged and pleaded me to go to KFC because she'd never been to KFC. And she's 16 or 17, whatever she is. And she got about halfway through it and went, this isn't chicken, Well, there you go. There's a classic thing with chicken, the nutrient density in chicken, because the way they're grown and so modified, people are now eating chicken that doesn't taste like chicken. Chicken fat's yellow, not white. Chickens aren't 2 kilo with massive breasts. Chickens aren't so genetically modified that their breasts are so heavy their legs break underneath them, which is common.
That I remember you saying about that, actually. Is it when they get to 40-something days they have to kill them because they get too heavy?
I think it's less than that. I think it's about 29 days.
Right.
I think it is. But, they market things. They are free to range, and free range. And it's not, it just means they're not in a cage. They're still confined.
Still in a massive shed.
Yeah, and all the different things. And the chemicals that get used to clean the sheds are phenomenal. That's got to have a flow on. But,
Could you tell us about the lights as well, where they keep the lights on?
Yeah, because while their lights are on, they're growing. So you speed it up. And it's not food, and it's not a way to keep an animal.
So these poor chickens they got the lights on 24/7, thinking it's daylight, is it?
I don't know whether it's 24/7, but it's a long time.
It's more than what it should be.
Yeah.
So they're eating more.
And they should be working. So going around scratching and digging and things like that. There are things like, at the moment we got a lot of ours confined to a smaller area than we'd like while things are happening, but they're still running around digging things, and we're throwing stuff to them and all that sort of business. But interesting thing I just learnt the other day, talking about meat and use and that. In the Appalachian Hills and that in America, every family used to grow a pig or two because they'd make ham, or smoke the hams and that. Now, if you think about shoulder on any animal is usually tougher because it does more work, but it's more succulent. Shoulder usually is. They used to always have a jump up of about half a metre, so the pigs had to jump up onto the top to eat their dinner. What it done is made the back legs work harder to jump up all the times during the day to give them a more succulent ham rather than a soft ham. So you start, and that's how you end up with and there is a scientific process behind that. But, just an interesting side note.
And I think you told me about they've actually done studies with the taste of meat and how the animal's actually treated. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So fear-free handling is a big thing. It used to be that you just chase cattle around, chase them into the yards, run them up to pens, and do the whole thing. And it's been so proven that the what's it called? The adrenaline and all that has an effect on the meat.
Cortisol and stuff like that, eh?
So there's 2 different types of kill in most countries, or in most less developed countries. There's basically an adrenaline kill and a non-adrenaline kill, because the meat tastes different. And some places prefer that taste of the stronger, darker adrenaline kill versus the other end. But it's like, so how do I explain that? Chickens. If you've ever eaten a piece of chicken and you get to the bone and there's like black stuff in there, that's electrocuted blood. That's burnt blood. So what they do is they electrocute the chicken. The blood's still around there, and it's because it's gone all through the bone marrow and that's basically cooked the blood onto the bone. Then you cook it again and it becomes loose, right? Whereas a healthy pasture-raised chicken that's been killed in the correct way will have none of that, and the meat will just fall off the bone. So listen to you guys talking about meat falling off the wings the other day. It's going to be hard to have it fall off the wings if it's not killed correctly.
Yes.
So the correct kill is they actually hang them upside down, and then they cut the jugular so that the autonomic nerve system keeps pumping the blood out. Yeah, but the chook, because it's upside down and no blood goes to the brain, they have such a tiny brain, they feel no pain. So it pumps all that blood out.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and that's a classic way of doing it. It's basically a halal kill without having the religious person standing there approving it.
Blessing. And like I've had people say to me before about not understanding how you can care for an animal and kill them and then eat them.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that sort of stuff?
I think it's the only way you can care for the animal. If you're going to raise an animal, see it born, do everything you can to give it all the stuff it needs through its life, you owe that animal the respect to give it one bad moment. That one bad moment might be, let's say a pig. We've done everything, we've looked after him all year, the whole thing, and today's the bad day. And for the last 2 weeks, though, I've been feeding him in the trailer. So he knows to get in the trailer. And he gets up in the trailer and this day, and then all of a sudden it's just bang, bullet to the back of the brain. That's his one bad moment. All his life you've cared for him, you've looked after him, all that sort of stuff, and then we use all the body parts as best we can. Right? So that's paying homage to the animal, whereas the alternate is, we throw him on a truck, he's shit scared, doesn't know what's going on, he's been living in this safe environment all his life, goes to the truck, gets pushed up through these pens, he might be there for a day, he might be there for 2 days, no food, no water, because they want to clean them out so that there's nothing in their system when they kill them. So they starve them for a bit. That affects the meat again because the animal's stressed. And then he gets run up and, someone takes a bigger, and everyone's scared because the fear permeates through the abattoir. I don't know if you've ever been in an abattoir. I've been in quite a few, and it's not a nice place to be. And then, they run them up and they zap them, or depending on where you're at and what you're doing. I would say I care for that animal more by giving him a good, clean, swift kill and use him the right way rather than be wasted and mistreated. So
that one animal's going to feed your whole, like a cow would feed your whole family for...
long time.
Yeah, whereas if you go to the supermarket, every time you buy a steak, that's a different life.
Yeah.
Essentially, not that you've taken, but I mean, you kind of...
It is, and if you buy a kilo of mince in Woolworths, there's up to 100 different beasts in that mince.
No way.
Yeah? They don't go and take... Because the mince is made out of trimmings, right? They don't go and take the trimmings from that one animal, mince it out, and then say, here, that's Betsy, right? They just add it all together in these massive machines. So it's industrialised. So, we love our animals. We, look at the chickens. My son would be there the day they're hatching, and at the same time we'll have that rooster on the table and they'll go, it doesn't taste as good as Betsy last month. They know that, so I think there's very much a respect for the animal. And what a better way of doing it. I hope if someone was going to knock me on the head, I'd have one bad moment. Not like the Jews in the train cars going to Auschwitz, so I'd rather just be shot in the back of the head.
The difference between like a factory farm compared to what you're explaining there is just night and day.
Yeah.
Why is the colour so like... Because if I go to Coles, even if I buy like grass-fed organic, which I always try to get the best quality, like it's always a lighter colour red than if you go to the butcher. Say like the mince looks completely different, the steak looks different, the cook's different.
There's a number of things. Some of that's oxidisation. Some of that is cryovacuum, which is where they suck all the air out and then they do that. But there's also the... I can't think of the name of it. They actually put colouring into things. So if you buy a kilo of mince from Woolies, sit it in the fridge for 2 days, or even if you got it straight away, you probably do it. When you take it out, break it in half, the middle's brown, but the outside layer is bright pink red, because that's what people want to see, bright pink red. Good meat, good beef is almost purple. Good, dry-aged, organic, well-raised meat is almost purple.
What, just so because it's so dark?
Yeah.
Because it's night and day different, like if you go to Bucock's compared to like Coles, and I'm talking about even if you buy the high quality shit, like not the, because I wouldn't buy that crap anyway, but there's a big difference. And even when you cook it, it's a lot different. Like it seems to hold a lot more water and stuff like that. Yeah,
so I mean, I should have brought some bacon. We did bacon not so long ago. If you put bacon in the pan that you get from Woolies or somewhere like that, you see all the water that comes out of it, and ours, there's nothing comes out of it. Like the other thing that they do, I'm going to end up getting sued by Woolies. Part of the process, and you can only if you go and buy yourself one and open them up and start having a look, you'll see the injection points in the breast where they pump it full of saline, so salt water.
Oh, I seen a video of that the other day where they put the meat through the conveyor and
Yep.
these like syringes come down, like
Yep.
50 of them, and they pump water into. Is that real?
Yep, absolutely.
What the
Right?
fuck?
So the two things it does, it makes it look better, big plump breasts that aren't really there. It also, let's say they add 100 grams over 1 million chickens, that 100 grams might be 10 cents in their pocket. So you're paying that much more for a bit of water, you know. And then when you cut it, you know, it's juicy. Now, that's fine if you're smoking a big hunk of meat for 18 hours and you want to inject it with your pineapple juice or your, you know, all those sort of things. That's a different matter. You're not paying for that, are you? And you're doing that one for a reason, whereas these are purely economical.
Do you know you're saying the chicken fat should be yellow?
Yeah.
Are they bleaching that then, or is it like
It's because it's never been used. It's never eaten real food.
Right.
Yeah. So chickens eat everything. They are unbelievable, right? People go, oh, chickens eat grain. Chickens never ate grain until post-industrial revolution. So even when I was growing up, you didn't eat chicken because it was too expensive to buy a chicken, and it also gave you eggs. All right, so chickens were used for eggs predominantly. There is no way you would ever give a chicken grain because grain was too expensive. You think you've got to grow wheat, let's say, in 1920. You had to go out and plough the paddocks probably with moldboard plough and a horse. You had to hand sow, you had to hand weed everything. Then you had to go out and cut it all, dry it, thresh it, to what? Give it to your chickens? No way. All right. It wasn't until grain becomes so cheap because of industrial mechanisation that they started doing it. Whereas chickens, I mean, they love a mouse. You know, they chase mice, they eat bugs, they eat mycelium that grows in compost, they eat, there's all these different little things that happen around them, and that's what they should be eating, not grains. So you start feeding them grains, you also end up with a fat chicken.
Do they feed them something to make the yolks more orange? Because I bought some eggs the other day and it was like saying no, I don't know what to say, like no dyes in the thing or something. They were like really expensive, good eggs, but they were like really yellow. And then like I go to Coles to get the free range ones. They're like so orange.
Yep. So the colour of the yolk is no correlation to the quality of the nutrient. But because you can do things like you can feed them paprika and things like that, you know, that will go through, and corn makes them more red.
Yeah.
But you can get ones that are quite pale that are just as nutrient dense. It depends on the breed.
Yeah.
How they process. Because the other thing is you've got egg laying birds, you've got meat birds, you've got combination birds, and it could be the time of the year. So something that I don't know if people know, but a chicken is born with every egg it'll ever lay in its body.
Similar to humans, isn't it?
Similar to humans, right? Yeah. So it's already there. It's just a matter of what gets put into it.
Right.
Yeah. And chickens should be eating a wide range of bugs and grubs and, we used to, when I was a kid, we were driving down the road and the old man would pull over and he'd see a rabbit that had myxomatosis. So we can't eat them. He'd shoot it, throw it up, or roadkill. Bring it home, they'd eat the roadkill. You know. We've just got so far away from it. Now chicken is the most eaten meat in Australia, but it's not chicken. Not what I would call chicken. It's just white fluff.
My uncle was saying about like going back when he was a kid. Everybody has chickens in the back garden, like. And we throw so many food scraps and stuff in the bin now, in a plastic bag, and we bury it in the ground. But like, should you be feeding it back to your chickens or like your worm farm and stuff as well, like, you know?
I watched a thing just the other day. There's a famous farmer in Swoop, Virginia, called Joel Salatin, and he was on Joe Rogan, and he was asked a thing, and he talked about a study that was done in, I think it was Denmark. The government paid for a cage and 3 chickens for every family if they wanted them. And I can't remember the figure, but the figure was that they shut down the green waste landfill in Denmark for 6 months within the first year and stopped all egg sales in Denmark. I'm pretty sure that's right. But that's just by having 3 or 4 chickens in the backyard.
It's crazy, eh?
I mean, Denmark's a different country. They don't have the hills and the different things going on. But yeah, it's not. And chickens are easy. They're quiet. Yeah, roosters, of course, aren't. But
Probably got to register them to the council or something. Like, I didn't realise with the bees, like the bee guy was telling me, he's like, oh, you got to register your hive. So I was like, you can't literally do anything without the government getting involved.
Well, it's just my opinion of that is better to ask forgiveness.
Ask for permission, yeah.
And beg
He's like,
forgiveness.
just say you caught a swarm.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, but
You didn't hear it here.
it's like the bee thing. The fact that the government's running around trying to kill all the bees at the moment in Australia, pretty scary thought.
Yeah, they're burning hives
Yeah.
like in thousands,
Yeah.
isn't they? Because of this Varroa beetle, is it?
Yep.
But we don't have them here, do we?
Yeah,
They're making their way up to Queensland now, yeah. Or they're in Queensland now.
Varroa. Yeah, but it's again, the government shouldn't get in the middle, and part of that's from doing too much monoculture.
Right.
But it's without bees we don't have anything.
Yeah, it'll be fucked.
Yeah,
Bees and trees.
yeah. So I can get on a rant about all this stuff for days. It's pretty scary actually.
One thing I did want to ask you before you shoot off is the thing you were telling us about the pigs. What they're doing with the pigs. Two things, actually.
Yep.
No, I'll go for the pigs first.
All right.
Tell us about that little thing that you were saying with the pigs.
Which one was that one?
Where they were feeding the pigs.
Oh,
Do they do that in-
ditch liquor.
they still do that in Australia?
Yeah. So they call them confinement houses or Tyson houses. So they're large sheds, piggeries, and the pigs live in these crates, and below them is a slatted floor, and below the floor is a big drain, basically. They figured out that there was a large percentage of the grain that was fed to the pigs would pass through the pigs, and then that gets shit out and it would get washed out. They figured out that they could recycle that through the feed to give it back to the pigs so they could process it again to save 30% of food wastage. It's called ditch liquor.
It's insane. And they're doing that in Australia
They're
today.
doing that
Yeah?
in Australia. They won't tell you that.
Yeah.
If you went up to one of these guys and said, show me in your shed and show me how you do it, they won't tell you that. But I've got first-hand experience of that, actually building the sheds and doing it.
Fucking hell.
And that's really common. And that's exactly the same thing that was happening in feedlotting in Britain, putting waste beef product back through the feedlots, and that's where you end up with mad cow disease. So, and I was a first-hand experience with that type of feedlotting when I was younger. Was our feedlots, we would melt 44-gallon drums of tallow on these barbecues that we made that would be mixed in with the grain and hay mix that we'd feed to the cattle to grain finish them, with adding melted beef tallow through it and then eat it. And that's why, that's the reason I wouldn't eat grain finished beef.
Fucking hell.
Yeah,
Is that legal to do that now?
absolutely.
That's insane, aye.
Feedlots are, feedlot thing. We hear about this global warming and how cow farts are destroying the earth and all this thing because of all this. Yeah, it's not the cow farts. There was more cattle on the North American continent 100 years ago than there is now. It's how we manage it. So when you go to Fort Worth, Texas, if you go and put 45,000 head of cattle a day, every day, on concrete, they shit before they go and get processed because that's mainly for McDonald's and I think Burger King and those ones. And then they take a reading anywhere in that vicinity. You've got 45,000 head of cattle on a concrete pad, shitting in one spot, not walking, shitting in different spots, and then having other animals like chickens or other birds come behind, scratch it out, spread it out. So one of the things that happens is you would have seen water buffalo and that have always got another bird around them. It's that symbiotic relationship. They pick the ticks off them. The other thing that happens is when they shit, you have a big 10-kilo paddy sitting on the ground. Flies come in, lay eggs in it. Within 3 or 4 days, you've got little maggots. So the birds come through, they eat the maggots, spread it all out. That then in turn helps the grass grow, helps the soil life, the soil biota. So you've got this entire process. So it's not the cattle creating the global warming.
It's the process.
It's what we're doing with it, how we're doing it.
Fuck, the environment would be fixed. Well, not fixed, but it would be helped so much if they just completely eradicated the factory farming, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And
It's like the G20 or whatever, and they're all flying on their jet planes talking about global warming.
Yeah, you've got to drink through a paper straw, but it's stuck through a plastic top. Like fucking what? But they'd say farming is causing all this global warming. It's not farming, it's the manner of farming. Farming can be the most restorative process or the most harmful. And we've got to get back into that process of thinking how the earth works, in a symbiotic relationship. And people talk about regenerative farming, syntropic farming, permaculture, organic farming. There's all these labels. At the end of the day, all they're trying to do is bring it back to a little bit like what it used to be. And they say to us, we shouldn't eat as much meat as we do. That's probably true, right? But meat's become cheap. We don't... Even when I was a kid in rural New South Wales, all the local farmers had a pig in their backyard, that you'd throw scraps to, and that pig would end up getting killed. That'd be bacon, ham, shoulders, loins. And then, especially if you had a few of the cool guys around, like a couple of the old Italian farmers and that, they do things like guanciale, which is like the jowl. It's like another type of bacon. Porchetta, all those sort of things. So, if we just went a little step back, educated ourselves a little bit, we could eat better, and we could live better.
Do you think it is getting better, like in terms of people are just starting to become more switched on with this kind of stuff?
No, I think it's getting worse. Because what's happening is people are listening to the wrong information. And there's things that are getting marketed to them as... It's an absolute farce how it's done. Like the kind of idea between free range, free to range, pasture raised, it's a totally different thing. And people get on this pseudo-moralistic quest of, well, I'm a vegan or I'm a vegetarian. My wife's vegetarian, right? I don't have a problem with it. But let's be realistic. To be a vegan, you're going to kill more stuff to get your 1 pound of tofu than you're ever going to kill to grow 100 kilo of beef. There's more water used to make 1 kilo of tofu than there is for a month of water for a cow.
And a lot of those superfoods and stuff are all grown like long way away, so they got to fly it over. So it's actually worse for the environment when you think of it.
Food miles.
Yeah.
Look at this crazy law in Australia that anything that's caught by a professional fisherman in any waters of Australia has to go through Sydney food markets. That's lunacy. Yeah. Why is it that we've got these massive coastlines, all this fish available to us, but most of us can't afford to eat it because it's too expensive? So look at those food miles. If you're a professional, not if you catch it yourself, but if you're a professional fisherman in Western Australia, your stuff gets put onto a refrigerated truck, shipped to Sydney so it can be processed back out.
How much is it going overseas, like the meat and that? Because you can go to anywhere and get like New Zealand lamb or Australian beef.
They sell it in Wales.
Yeah.
Wales has has ridiculous amounts of sheep, but they buy New Zealand lamb.
Yeah.
It's the other side of the world.
That's marketing.
It's like 17,000 kilometres or 70,000 miles or whatever it is.
Welsh lamb's some of the best lamb in the world.
Yeah.
Famous for it.
Yeah.
I'll stay away from the jokes.
They taste good, and they're a good shag, isn't it?
But it was, when I was in Canada, I could buy Australian lamb cheaper than I can buy it here. What's that tell you?
Yeah.
I think just get rid of the government, do it yourself, make friends with some farmers. I'm not suggesting go and just banging on a farmer's door at 7 a.m. and say, will you sell me stuff? Because you might get in a bit of trouble doing that, because they're going to be cagey as well, especially if it's a dairy farmer or someone you go, give me raw milk. They can lose everything. But get to know people, or get together and find some of these mobs that will sell you half a beast between you and 5 of your mates. Give them the money, wait 6 months. They'll call you up, you come out, pick up all your meat, bring it home, put it in the freezer. It's going to cost you not much. So it'll
be more cost efficient and better quality, isn't it?
Yeah. And some people don't like frozen meat so much, and I don't particularly like to freeze everything, but that's what we have, right? And it's way better than the alternative. But then, learn to do a few other little things, different types of curing things. It's not hard to... take a lamb neck, something that most butchers will beg you to take off their hands, bring it home, or if you know them a bit, bone it out a little bit, get some curing salts, cure it for, I think it's 3 days a pound, I think it is. Cure it. Now you've got this salami essentially after 6 weeks. all right, that's cost you maybe $5. You know, just a simple thing like that. You know, preserving food and fermenting foods is the name of the game. And people go, I don't eat a lot of fermented foods or whatever, but everything we eat is fermented. Doesn't matter. Like, what about one of the simplest ones? Dry aging beef is fermenting food. It's controlled breakdown. So, you know, I think, and you'll have better health, spend less money, and spend less money. The money that you spend will go to the people that deserve it.
Yeah, not some fucking rich supermarket.
Yeah.
Supermarkets haven't actually been around that long either, have they?
1947 was the first ever supermarket that was known to be in existence. It was in America.
Right.
So again, it comes back to this thing where they've tried to centralise everything rather than decentralise.
Even when I was like younger, you know, and like I'm only 32. I can remember being little and going to food markets every weekend, you know, and like they're not around, like where I'm from, they're not around that area anymore. They're just in the city where they'd have like one food market in Swansea, but they didn't have any supermarkets where I lived at all. Only you'd have to go into Swansea like 30 minutes, but in the local towns and all, there was none. They just had weekend markets.
Go to Thailand where they shop twice a day. Yeah. They don't have supermarkets in Thailand, really. There are other parts, but go to Marrakesh, North Africa, and that there. They've got the Medinas that have been going for 1,000 years, you know, and I guess you can say that's like a supermarket, but each purveyor has his own individual thing. So I guess that's, you know, we still buy stuff, go to the supermarket at times because you just, you know, we're not living like the Amish. You know, there's things that you need, but it's about informed decisions, I think, and not just being informed because some influencer says eat this. You know, it's pretty scary stuff. And learn to cook. Learn to cook at home.
Yeah.
You know, that could be learning to poach an egg or make an omelette or roast things or making sourdough bread is one of the most rewarding things you'll ever do.
Oh, I disagree, John. Luce has tried that 3 times and tasted worse every time.
Well, you know, mate, I won't go into that one.
No, she tried a few times. We'll have to get some tips off you for that one.
But, you know, all that, it's you'll have a lot more rewarding situation.
Yeah.
And if you've got kids, you know, people have trouble with kids eating carrots or whatever it may be. I guarantee you if they grow it or harvest it or be part of it, they'll eat it. You know, that's a huge thing.
Yeah, the cooking side of things, like I never used to. Well, I used to attempt to cook you a steak or lamb before. It was most.
Yeah, I had a steak with you once. I remember
the overdone steak in the world, but
Johnny special.
Yeah, the more
it's still at home as a doorstop.
Yeah, but no, once you get into it, you enjoy it more, don't you? But yeah, thanks for coming on, John. I appreciate that a lot. It's a lot of good info now.
No worries.
That was mad.
Cheers,
Johnny.
Thanks very much, mate.